You're watching Knowledge and Wisdom, where we explore the depths of history, theology, philosophy, archaeology, and beyond. If you're curious to uncover truth and insight across time, this is the place for you. I wanted to just talk about something about Origen, the very well-known ecclesiastical writer from the 3rd century. At the time, he was probably the most noteworthy theologian and priest of his day, beloved by almost everybody at that time. Later on, he kind of fell into disfavor in certain circles, especially with the emperor, and ended up being condemned at a council in Constantinople. And since then since then he hasn't been seen in very favorable light, but he's somewhat undergoing a rehabilitation in certain circles right now, including in Eastern Orthodox circles. Well, be that as it may, Origen was a force to be reckoned with, whether you like him or not, whether you agree with everything he said or not, whether you think he was a heretic or not. He was incredibly influential. And I was just reading an article by Michael Bird, who talks about Origen on gospel harmonization. And Origen takes the position that there are contradictions in the gospels. He says there are things in the Gospels that just simply cannot be harmonized if we are taking everything at face value and considering all of the events to be historical. And, this actually wasn't unique to him. A lot of people have come to that conclusion. And it leads to the question of inerrancy and maybe more limited versions of inerrancy versus those who would argue for a full version of inerrancy. It kind of gets into those debates. Well, Origen held that there were some errors in the Gospels, in the Bible, and on a strict level they could not be harmonized. However, he believed that was intentional in nature. He maintained that yes, on one level there are contradictions, but that's because not everything in the Gospels were meant to be historical accounts of, say, the life of Jesus or the ministry of Jesus, but certain aspects were meant to be theological in nature and had a higher purpose, maybe were allegorical in nature. And so he would kind of go into other levels of biblical interpretation beyond just the literal historical interpretation. On the literal historical sense of Scripture, he would say there are contradictions. But when you compare the literal sense of this gospel versus an allegorical sense and interpretation of this other gospel, then they can be harmonized, because his perspective was the purpose of the Gospels wasn't always to present something historical, but sometimes something theological and allegorical and moral in nature. And so that was his way to kind of harmonize what he saw as difficulties in the Gospels. I'm not necessarily saying his perspective was accurate, but it is a fascinating attempt at a solution to a very difficult question that I think all biblical scholars recognize is one that deserves a solution and deserves some discussion. So anyways, I just wanted to briefly introduce you to that topic and that perspective from Origen, and I'll include a link to the article from Michael Bird in the comment section, so y'all go and check it out there. And once again, thank you so much for supporting the channel, and drop a comment and let me know what you think about the question of gospel harmonization and what you think about Origen's approach. We'll see you later. God bless. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and for a deeper dive, check out my courses at rtcourses.com and my Patreon channel at patreon.com/reason and theology.